This one also not is related to some other. Must program Linux administrator, must program DevOps, Linux skills 15. Yeah, guys. Yeah, guys. So what we discussed in the previous class, so we discussed about the Docker, simple Docker, right, guys? So Docker, what is an application? We discussed about. So we discussed about life with Docker, right? Life with Docker, life without Docker. So Docker architecture also we discussed, right, guys, in the previous class. Or this is the second class. Yeah, guys. So we already know, right? In the something like in the real time, the application environment should be. So the environment should be something like a dev environment, set environment. One second, guys. Yeah. So the environments you already know, right? So the Docker, the environments in the real time. So something like a non-production environment and the production environment. So in the non-production environment, there might be some people are calling it a staging, dev environment, or QA environment, or a pre-prod or integration. So they call it as right. So dev environment is nothing but a developers write that code and test that code in the develop environment. So it is nothing but a testing team or a system integration team. UAT is nothing but a client side testing, user acceptance test, right? Pilot is nothing but a pre-production testing with the live data. So these are all the environments, right? So these all are the live environments I will show you. So that application environments. So application environments. Application environments. So what are the environments are there in real time? So our application, we will deploy into multiple environments for testing purpose. Application will deploy, so will be deployed to, so deployed into multiple environments. Okay, so multiple environments. So for testing purpose, testing purpose. So what are those environments? Something like one is nothing but a dev env. So in this dev env, right? So developers testing purpose they are using, and the second environment. So second one is nothing but a sit env, sit env. So this is for testing team. Testing team will test the testing means QA team. So this is for system integration purpose we are using. So the third one is UAT, right? UAT is nothing but a user acceptance test. So this is the client testing, client side testing, or a beta environments also we then some people are calling, some environments are, some companies are calling a beta. Beta is nothing but a client side testing environment. So user acceptance testing. Okay. So the fourth one is pilot environment. What is that? So pilot. So Pilot env is nothing but, okay, pre-production and testing the testing with the live data. Okay, so testing with live data. So right. So once testing is completed in all the above environments, then it will be deployed into the production environment. So you already know, right? So once testing is completed, once the development and testing. So once the development and testing completed in all above environments, then deployed to it will be deployed into production environment, right? Production env. Okay, production environments, it's a live environment. So whatever the application we are using in the internet, right? For example, Facebook, WhatsApp, Twitter, any website, whatever the website we are seeing in the internet, the browser. So those websites are the production environment. Production environment means live environment. Live environment. So and the end user users will access application from the production environment. So what is that? Who is the end user? End user will access application from production env. From the production env. Yes, understood? Now you understood the application environments. So what are the application environments? Dev environments, set to UAT, pilot, and production environments. So now, so life with the so life without Docker. Life without Docker. You already know, right? Containerization Docker is the containerization software. Life without Docker. What is that life without Docker? We need to install the all the required softwares. Mm, yeah. So this is the production environment, right? So we need to install all the softwares here. So something like we need to install the Java Tomcat, 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 right? So we need to get the license and we need to install all the environment. So all the environments, right? So so and we can deploy the application in each environment. We can deploy the application in the each environment. So for example, the the libraries are different from the environment to environment. For example, development environment, it will be working, but in the production environment, so when we deploy the application in the production environment, it will not working because of the the versions of application in Java and Tomcat version should be different from the non-prod to prod. So that's the reason while deploying the production environment, it will not work the application will not work. So because of the mismatch of the versions, right? So Docker without life without Docker. So what is the life without Docker? Okay. So we need to install all the required softwares in all the environments to run our application. So we need to make sure we are using same versions of the software in all the missions. If any software version is not matched, then application execution may fail. Right? Application execution may fail. So this is a life without Docker. So life without Docker. What is that? We need to install all the required softwares in all environments, right? All environments to run our application, Okay. So we need to make sure we need to make sure we are using same versions of softwares in all missions, same versions of softwares in all missions. right? So, and if any software version is software version not matched, then application will not work. Application execution may fail. Application execution may fail. So, Hari installed Java 11 version in dev environment. 11 dev environment, and Sunil installed Java 8 version in sit env. In sit env. If we want to run our application in multiple machines, then we have to install required software in all those missions, which is hectic task, right, guys? So we need to install the softwares in the So we need to softwares in the all the environments, set environments, UAT, integration, dev, production. So it will be a hectic task, right, guys? So what is that? Yeah, yeah. So OMK, yeah, Samsung will be slow. So that OMK, I will show you. I will give you the topics what we are covering in the end of the session. Okay, guys. Yeah, guys. Uh, yes. If we want to if we want to run our application, if you want to run our application in multiple missions, what is that? In multiple missions, so then we have to install required softwares in all the all those missions, all those missions, which is hectic. So which is hectic task, right? So if you want to run our application in multiple missions, then we have to install required softwares in all those missions, which is hectic. It is hectic a task. So right. So life with Docker, guys. So what is life with Docker? So life with Docker. So what is the life with Docker? The Docker is you already know the containerization. I already discussed about the content is what is the difference between physical virtualization and containerization. So right, you already know the containerization. So who is provided the software for the containerization? Docker. Docker will provide the containerization solution. So right. So life without Docker, you understood the what is the issue with without life Docker. Okay. Yeah, I will show you. Yeah. So right. So in the dev environment, set environment, UAT environment, pilot environment, and production environment. So everywhere we need to install all the softwares. So it will be a hectic problem. So it will be a hectic problem to install the softwares on all the missions. So the life with life with Docker. So what is the life with Docker? Docker is a containerization platform. What is that? Docker is a containerization containerization platform. What is that? So Docker is a containerization platform. Docker is used to build and deploy our application into any mission without bothering about the dependencies. So whatever the dependencies we are right. So without bothering dependencies, I will tell you. No worries. Docker Docker is used to build and deploy our application our application into any machine. Like for example, I will tell you guys without bothering about dependencies. Dependencies means softwares. What is that, guys? Dependencies, right? So here, so Docker is used to build and apply our application into any mission without bothering about the dependencies. So what the Docker container contains, what the Docker container contains. So the OS dependencies. So dependencies as well as your application code. So a Docker container contains a OS, dependencies, and application. Okay. So and so this is below 1 GB. So a Docker container below 1 GB only. So this container contains a OS, no need a OS. And this container contains this already installed the dependencies. Dependencies is nothing but a Java and Tomcat. Application code also. Your application code also installed. So what is that? I will show you that. This is the one I think. So, yeah, here. Yeah. So you see here, guys. So this is we are trying to build the Docker image from CentOS. This is the CentOS. So we are installing the Java and the Tomcat. This is the Tomcat. Okay. Then we deploy the application in the web apps. Then we deploy our application. This is our application slab6a.jar. Okay. So everything will be in the container. Everything will be in the container. No need a OS, no need a dependencies, no need the application. Everything will be in the one container, right? So for example, this is the container. This container contains everything. So you can deploy it on anywhere. So for example, this container, for example, this is the container. Okay. So this container having a CentOS, but this mission is a Ubuntu mission. What is that? So Ubuntu Linux. So this is a Oracle Linux. This is a Red Hat Linux. What is that? So Red Hat Linux. This is something like Amazon Linux. What is that? Amazon Linux. You can deploy this. So you can deploy this on anywhere. You can deploy this on anywhere. Just you need to run the Docker service only. Just if the Docker service is if the Docker service is running on this mission, every mission, so no need to worry about the dependencies. Dependencies is nothing but a Java, Tomcat, versions, everything. Because of it contains everything. It contains everything. No need to bother about the OS. No need to bother about the dependencies. No need to bother about the application. You can run this application on anywhere. So, for example, this is a dev environment, UAT environment, SAT environment, production environment, everywhere. So we can deploy it. So now you understood. So once we create the Docker container, it will be reusable. It will be reusable on every environment. That is the beauty of the Docker. That is the beauty of the Docker. Is understood? Guys, speak out, guys. So now you understood. So life with Docker. So now you understood the life with Docker, right? So life with Docker. A Docker is used to build and apply our application to any mission without bothering about the dependencies. without bothering about the dependencies. Dependencies means softwares. You already know, right? Java, Tomcat. So, so dependencies means the softwares. What are those? Dependencies means softwares which are required to run our application. So which are required to run our application. Guys, understood? I was asking, sir, please a bit slow in theory explanation. Sure, sure. Yeah. So dependencies means the softwares which are required to run our application, right? So dependencies means you understood the software. So for example, Java and Java plus Tomcat, we need to install that. So that softwares, so which are required to run our application. Dependencies means, so in container we have a OS, dependencies and application. So dependencies and application. So we can run it on anywhere. We can run it on anywhere. Understood, Sham? So like dependencies, depend dependencies equal to OS. What is that? OS, for example, Angular, React, React application, Java application, DB application, Tomcat application, etc. Right? So these all are the dependencies. So Docker will, guys, Docker will reduce the gap between development and deployment. What is that? Docker will reduce the gap between development and deployment, right? So the deployment, once the Docker image is built, right, it will be very easy to run it on anywhere. So it reduces the gap between development and the deployment. Yes, understood? So it will be, yeah. So this is the uh, Docker, life with Docker and life without Docker. So we have many issues. A life with Docker, so it will be very simple. It will be very simple. Guys, understood? Yep, guys. So the next is Docker architecture. So what is the Docker architecture? I will show you the Docker architecture. Yeah. So this is the Docker architecture. So from the Docker file, so we will create a Docker file, something like I already show you, right? The Docker file, something like this is the Docker file. So from the Docker file, what we will build, so from the Docker file, so we will build the Docker images. We will build the Docker images. So from the Docker images, we run as a container. So from the Docker images, so we run as a container. Guys, so where we can deploy our, where we can storage our Docker images. Docker images is nothing but a artifacts. So where we can, you will be sharing these images, notepad to us. Yes, we'll share Sham, everything. Yeah. So right, so Docker architecture. So from the Docker file, so we will build the Docker images. So from the Docker images, we will run the Docker container. So guys, if anyone is working on the real-time environment, so if anyone is working on the real-time environment, you guys are know about the JFrag Artifactory or a Nexus Artifactory or ECR, so Elastic Container Registry Artifactories. So these all are the artifactors. So you can store that Docker images. You can store that Docker images. Yeah, you see. So you run as a, so build the Docker image. You can build the Docker images. From the Docker images, you can run the Docker containers. So these Docker containers, whatever the Docker images, right? Docker image will be pushed to the Docker Hub registry. What is that? Docker Hub registry. So for example, this is my Docker Hub registry, or else JFrog. So JFrog Artifactory. So this is the JFrog Artifactory tool, guys. So you can get this one also. You can sign up this one. You can push this Docker images to the JFrog, or else Nexus. So Nexus repository. So in the Nexus repository also, so in the Nexus repository also you can upload the. Okay, so something like we can upload the images to whatever the images we build, right? We can upload this one, and we can push it to the any environment. Okay, so we can push it to the any environment. For
So
example, I will
JFrog is
show you.
also a repository, sir.
Yeah, JFrog is also a artifact repository.
Okay.
JFrog is a artifactory repository. So whatever the Docker images, right? These Docker images will be. Yeah. So these Docker images will be pushed to the Artifactory. Then we can deploy it on the any environment. So for example, I will show you. Yeah, you see. So from the Docker file, we can build the Docker images. So from the Docker images, we can push it to the Docker Hub registry. Then Docker Hub registry too, we can pull on dev environment, a pilot environment, or a production environment. Whatever the environments, we can push it that Docker images, and we can deploy these Docker images. Understood, Sham?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So right now you understood the Docker architecture. So right, Docker architecture is nothing but a, so first from the Docker file build the Docker images, from the Docker images to run as a container. So run as a container. Docker. So Docker architecture. So what is the Docker architecture? I already showed you, right? So what is that? Docker Docker file. So first one is the Docker file. Second one is the Docker image. So third one is the Docker registry. Docker registry. And fourth one is the Docker container. Docker container. Yes, understood. Docker architecture. So what is the Docker architecture, guys? Yeah, Docker file. From the Docker file to we can create as a Docker image. So from the Docker image to you can push it to the Docker Hub repository. So from the Docker Hub repository to Docker container, you can run as a container. So guys, understood the Docker image, the Docker architecture. So what is a Docker bundle? It contains instruction to build a Docker image. Right. So what are the instructions I already showed, right? So these are the instructions to build the Docker image. So what instructions? We have a OS along as a softwares and our application, jar or var application, and it will be bundled into as a Docker image. Okay. So it contains instruction to build the Docker images. From these instructions, it will build the Docker image. Okay. Docker image. So what is a Docker image? It is a package. It is a package which contains code plus dependencies. So Docker image, it is a package which contains code plus dependencies. So what is a Docker image? It is a package which contains code plus dependencies. Understood? So it contains a code plus dependencies. So what is that registry? It is a repository to store the Docker images. What is that? It is a repository to store Docker images. to store the Docker images. Guys, understood? So it is a repository to store Docker images. So here you see. So this is my Docker Hub repository. In my Docker Hub repository, so how many Docker images we have? Many Docker images we have. You see, so these many Docker images are from mine. So my Tomcat Java, Apache, Lab 6a, my first Tomcat Web. So my build, my first. So these are related to. So 14 hours ago, 1 day ago, 18 days ago, 13 days ago, about 1 month, 10 months ago, 12 months ago. These all are my Docker images. So we can pull the images on any environment and run as a container. Okay. Once you build the Docker image, you can push it to the repository. So where is a Docker? What is a Docker repository? It is a repository store the Docker images. So not only a Docker Hub. So we have a JFrog Artifactory and Sonatype Nexus also. These are also ECR Amazon ECR also a repository. Okay, guys, understood? So how you can store the Docker images, Docker container. So what is a Docker container, guys? Docker container. So Docker container, it is a runtime process which run our application. What is that? It is a runtime process which runs our application. What is that? Which runs our application. So Docker file, it contains an instruction to build Docker images. It contains instructions to build Docker images. Docker image is nothing but it is a package which contains code plus dependencies. Docker registry, it is a repository to store Docker images. To store Docker images. Docker container, it is a runtime process which run our applications. Which runs our applications. Guys, understood? So what is the node, guys? Node is nothing but once the Docker image is created, then we can pull the Docker image and we can run that Docker image in any mission. Understood? Once a Docker image is created, once the Docker image is created, then we can pull that image and we can run that image in any mission. We can run that image in any mission. Note, once the Docker image is created, then we can pull that image and we can run that image in any mission. Guys, understood? Guys, understood or not? Yeah. So we already discussed about these things, right? Yeah. So now you understood the Docker. So life without Docker. So what are those application environments? So life without Docker, life with Docker, and architecture of the Docker. So you already know the containerization. So what is a containerization? So few of them are joined. Few of them are joined today, right? So we'll tell you the containerization. Okay. Okay. So containerization. So guys, so who are joined today? Who are joined today? Something like who? I saw a message in the chat. Who is OMK, right? OMK joined today. Yeah. So what is a containerization? So what we will discuss in this class, we will discuss about the Docker and Kubernetes and Jenkins. Docker, Kubernetes and Jenkins. So what are the content? Yeah, so in the last, so we'll show you the content also. What is a containerization? Who joined today? So containerization. So what is a containerization, guys? It is used to pack all the softwares and application code in one container for execution. So right, what is that? So what is a container? So it is used to package all the softwares and application code in one container for the execution is called as a containerization. So container will take care of everything which is required to run our applications, and we can run the containers in multiple machines easily. Docker is a containerization software. Who is Docker is the containerization software. Using Docker, we will create a container for our application. Using Docker, we will create an image for our application. Docker images, so we can share easily with the multiple missions. Using Docker image, we can create a Docker container, we can execute it, guys. So now you understood the containerization. So what is this, guys? It is used to package all the softwares and application code in one container for the execution. One container for the execution, right? And so what is a container will take care of, will take care of everything, will take care of everything which is required, which is required to run our application, which is required to run our application. Guys, understood? Container will take care of everything which is required to run our application. It is used to pack all the softwares and application code in one container for the execution. Okay, so we can run the containers in multiple missions easily. Multiple missions easily, right? So Docker is a containerization software. What is that? Docker is a containerization containerization software. Docker is the containerization software using Docker. Using Docker. So we will create the container for our application using Docker. So we will create container for our application. For our application. Using Docker means need to run the Docker service on the machine. Then only it will create the Docker images, it will run the containers. So if the Docker service is not running, the Docker will not work, the container will not work. So it should be running at every time. It should be running at every time. Yes, understood. So using Docker, we'll create a container for our application. So using Docker, so we will create a image for our application. First, it will create the image. Okay. Then we'll push it to the repository. Then pull it to the environment and run as a container. Run as a container. Okay. Docker images Docker images we can share easily with the multiple missions, right? How? Through the registry. Docker images, so we can share easily. We can share easily to multiple missions. We can share easily to multiple missions. So using Docker image, we can create. What is that, guys? Using Docker image, so we can create Docker container and we can execute it. We can execute it. Guys, understood? So the containerization, it is used to package all the softwares and application code in one container for the execution. container will take care of everything which is required to run our application. So we can run containers in multiple machines easily. Docker is a containerization software. Okay. So using Docker, we will create a container for our applications. So using Docker, we will create an image for our applications. Docker images we can share easily to multiple machines. Using Docker image, we can create the Docker container and we can run execute it. I will show you this. Yeah. So from the Docker image, so from the Docker, using the Docker build from the Docker file, you can build the Docker images and push it to the Docker registry, then pull it to the whatever the environment in the servers, then we can run as a container. So this is the a complete Docker complete architecture, guys. Guys, understood? Guys, understood? Hi, Om. Om. Yeah, I will show you at the end of the class the course content. Om. Okay. Yeah. What is the course? Yep, thank you. So what we will cover in this course, so I will show you in the in this way the Docker architecture, so Docker commands and so virtualization, containerization commands, how you can build the Docker terminology, Docker file, Docker image, and Docker commands, how you can create the Docker images. So Docker repository, Docker file creations, how you can create the keywords through the keywords. So what is the difference between words, users expose. So what is a Docker file and so port assigning to the Docker file. Okay. So Docker volumes, a Docker container contains a 1 GB of, right? So, but I want to store the application logs. For example, Facebook or WhatsApp or whatever the social media who are login and log out. So I need a log where we need to create the where we need to store that log. So in the physical mission, there is EC2 instance or we'll store it uh in the storage, right? For example, we have a directory and the directory having a 50 GB. So then we can store the file. We can store the logs in that file. But Docker contains only 1 GB, right? We cannot write the logs within the 1 GB. How you can write the logs, or you can write the logs by using the Docker volume. So Docker volumes and the Docker volumes mounted to the EC2 instance also, and bound mounted, and we can discuss it. Okay, host mounted, bound mounted, and we'll discuss the microservices. So monolithic application versus microservices. So in the waterfall model, in the initially waterfall model, they used only the monolithic application. So once the Agile comes into the picture, a DevOps comes into the picture, a microservice based application came into the picture. So what is that? So for example, every component they created as a container. If for example, WhatsApp initially starts from chat and contacts. So chat is one container and contact is one container in the microservice application. In the monolithic application, everything will be in the one server. So that chat and contact. If anything goes wrong on the so right. So in the monolithic application, all the code will be in the one server, but in the microservice application, so that every module will be something like a one container, and we can, if something goes wrong on that container will affect, and that module only will affect it. The entire application will not affect it. In the monolithic application, if something goes wrong on the anything, so the entire application will gone, right? So this is the beauty of the microservices. So what are the microservices? Docker Compose, right? So we'll discuss it, and the Kubernetes. So what we will discuss next? Kubernetes. So Kubernetes. So what is the difference between Docker SAM and Kubernetes? So how Kubernetes came into the picture, who developed that feature, and who's donated the uh, whom to donate it to this Kubernetes, and what is the difference between Docker and Kubernetes. So what is the Kubernetes? What is the architecture diagram of the Kubernetes? Kubernetes setup, EKS by AWS. How you can set up the EKS by AWS and the cluster setup, Minikube, that master workshop, master nodes and worker nodes. What is a master node and worker node? How we can connect it? How we can deploy our application? So, so the container. What is a container? Pod, or namespace, or services, or deployments, or replication controller, replica set, daemon sets, so persistent volumes, so stateful sets, so roles, so secrets and config configs. So Kubernetes core concepts, so namespace. So we'll show you guys. Now, what are the services I discussed with you, right? So we'll discuss everything. That ELK also will discuss. That Prometheus, Grafana, ELK, Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana. How the application logs are saying the developers will search it in the ELK logs and they will find out what is the issue, right? So they are unable to access the production servers because of developer doesn't have the access to the production servers, right? So what are the strategies of the deployment strategies? Rolling update, recreate, blue and green deployment model. What is a blue green deployment model? So and config map secret. So and we'll discuss about the stateful, stateless Helm charts. We'll discuss about and we'll discuss about the Prometheus, Grafana, the dashboard, ELK. We'll discuss it and auto scaling, ingress. So we'll discuss about the limits and requests also. So, okay. So we'll discuss the limits and requests. So, and finally, we'll discuss the CI/CD. So, we'll show you the GitLab CI/CD, how it works. But yeah, so we'll discuss in the Jenkins. Jenkins, what is a Jenkins? What is CI/CD? So, how it came? So, what is the open source? So, how we can build the job? So, how we can deploy our application? So, manually in the Docker, we manually run the containers, right? I don't want to run the manually. I want to so I want to run through job. If you run the job, it automatically deploy in the servers. So we'll show you the Jenkins parts, integrate with Jenkins, how you can integrate with Jenkins, Maven, Tomcat, how you can integrate with the Tomcat server, then Kubernetes, Docker and Kubernetes. We'll show it to you guys. Home, now you understood. So what are the concepts we are covering in this course? Home, understood home? Yeah, thank you. So now you understood what we will cover in this course. So we'll cover Tomcat, the Jenkins, Docker, and Kubernetes. So we'll show you how we can deploy, how we can build and deploy the jobs. We'll show it on this course. The course is content. So I think you can check with the DurgaSoft. They will provide the content. Okay. Okay. Guys, understood? Yeah, guys. So duration and timings. The duration and timings is 8 to 9 only. It's a 30 days, 30-hour session. Okay. So 8 a.m. to this is 28th, right? 28th. So this is the 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. IST. So every day. So the class will be, the duration will be 30 days. So understood, guys? Yep, guys. So we'll continue from tomorrow.